Alright guys, this is Chatterbox Reviews, coming to you guys with my throwback review for the pilot of the TV series Fringe. Alright, so this will be the 5th installment in my Throwback pilot review series here on the channel. So far I've done Justified, Breaking Bad, White Collar, and Suits, and all 4 of those shows are some of my favorite TV shows of all time. This one I actually have not seen before. I've heard a lot about Fringe. Obviously I know Anna Torv from Mindhunter, you know, Netflix series. That, speaking of favorite shows of all time, that is up there for me for sure with only 2 seasons, but she was great in that. And so I heard, you know, when I was watching Mindhunter, obviously I looked more into Anna Torv and heard about Fringe, and then just in recent times I've been like even more interested in this show. So I thought, what a great time to kind of look at the pilot episode of this one, and then beyond this video I might actually, you know, go in and check out the show for a little bit longer. But anyways, so yeah, this series is all about looking at pilots of TV shows that have completely finished airing, ideally for at least a couple years. Of course, this one has been off there for quite a while, right? I think it was 2013 that it ended, started in 2008 with this pilot episode, so kind of right in there with that golden age of TV, right? That I don't know if you call it a decade, but maybe like 6 or 7 years there from about 2008, 2009 to 2015, right? Kind of the considered the golden age of television with all those, you know, huge shows, Mad Men, Boardwalk Empire, Breaking Bad, you know, all of those big shows. And so anyways, I thought this one would definitely kind of fit that criteria, and yeah, so really excited to take a look at this one and kind of share my thoughts. And like I said, it's a bit different from the ones I've covered already because I'm not as familiar with this show, and so I won't have, you know, as much kind of background to it, and I really am just approaching it as just watching this pilot episode and not really knowing much more about the series. But anyways, love to hear your guys' thoughts on this show in general, but of course the pilot episode too. I know there's a lot of like ardent fans of this show, especially towards the end of its run. I've heard that it was, you know, the viewership wasn't that high, but the people who were tuning into it were kind of obsessed with it, or were kind of really on board with it, kind of this cult classic, if you will, you know, at least towards the end of its run. So yeah, love to hear your guys' thoughts if you're a fan of this one and a fan of this pilot episode. And if you enjoy this review, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel as well. Would really appreciate that. But without any further ado, I'm going to get into a bit of an analysis. Where I'll be talking about characters, the world or atmosphere, the hook or the twist, and then kind of the uniqueness, right? Does this pilot or does this show stand out within its kind of own genre and other shows that are similar to it, and all that stuff? And then I'll end off with a rating out of 10, and that's kind of a way to kind of benchmark how all these pilots compare by the time I'm done with this series. You know, with who knows, right? There's kind of unlimited pilots out there. So yeah, that would be cool. So anyways, the director of this episode, then, this pilot, is Alex Graves, and he directed a few Game of Thrones episodes, but the one obviously that stands out is the Mountain and the Viper, the big fight between the Mountain and and Pedro Pascal's character, right, in Game of Thrones. And he directed that episode, which I think a lot of people would consider one of the best episodes, or at least one of the most well-known episodes of TV maybe ever, and I think that's a great episode, so he's definitely has that to his name. But he's directed a lot of other things. Unfortunately, he doesn't direct any more episodes of Fringe, though. It's only just this pilot episode. So the series then is created by J.J. Abrams, Alex Kurtzman, and Roberto Orci, and they, of course, wrote this pilot episode. So J.J. Abrams, of course, needs no introduction. Everyone knows who he is, of course. A lot of the stuff around this show is very similar to Lost, right? So you're going to get a lot of, I believe, some of the same writers from Lost came over to this show. Of course, J.J. Abrams involved with that one. And so you see a lot of those kind of comparisons. Elias as well, or Alias. That was another show that J.J. Abrams created around this time. So I think a lot of those kind of shows are kind of similar in that way. And so, J.J. Abrams kind of the name behind all of those. And then Alex Kurtzman, I believe he's doing Star Trek Strange New Worlds, I believe, right now. And he's done a few other series. He did one on Apple as well with Josh Brolin, I believe. Or is it Josh Brolin or someone like that on Apple sci-fi series recently. And Roberto Orci I don't know as much about. But yeah, so obviously kind of big names here involved, especially J.J. Abrams, main producer behind the show. He's the one kind of that, had this idea and kind of put it forward. And obviously a big name coming off of Lost around this time. So yeah, kind of cool to kind of see, all of these shows, be successful at this time. And then obviously the writers from all these shows have gone on to do, really great things, right? And had a lot of success. J.H. Wyman, I believe, who I believe, if I'm not mistaken, became the showrunner of this show, right, in later seasons. And he went on to create a show called Debris that I checked out a couple years ago. And it's like very similar to the concept of this show, which I didn't know at the time while I was watching Debris. So it's kind of, comes full circle and makes a lot of sense that, the head writer or showrunner from this show would go on to make something like that, where it's like literally, this agency that's investigating these kind of supernatural crimes or situations, and it's that sci-fi element in there too. So yeah, a lot of the same kind of writers of this genre went on to create other things as well. So in terms of the cast for this pilot episode, obviously we have Anna Torv at the center. She is the star of this one, playing Olivia Dunham, and so she's kind of our main character. And like I said off the top, I know her best from Mindhunter because I didn't know about this show before then, and she was amazing in Mindhunter. So really wanted to take a look at this one, like I said, basically because of her, because of what I had known about her from Mindhunter. And then we have Joshua Jackson, which I don't know much about him. John Noble, who's in Lord of the Rings. So it's cool to see him in this one as well, playing kind of a mad scientist type character. Mark Valley, who's very prominent in this pilot episode. I'm not sure how prominent he is going forward because, spoilers, he dies in this episode, but it is a sci-fi show, so we'll have to see. And the ending, which I'll talk about, may kind of hint that he might be in some more episodes, but he is a big focal point in this pilot. And then, of course, Lance Reddick, who's a huge role on The Wire and a bunch of other things that he's been in. And I really like him as an actor, and I think he's great here in this pilot episode. So, yeah, that'll do it for the cast for this one in terms of just the main players for this pilot episode. Though I'm sure we get a lot more, cast members as the series goes on. And like I said, even Mark Valley, maybe he's not featured as much, but in this pilot episode, I'd say he's one of the main ones there. So in terms of the synopsis or premise for this pilot episode, it is kind of a little convoluted, I would say, or a little confusing, right? Because we don't actually get to the premise of the show, which is Olivia Dunham, Anna Torv's our main character, Anna Torv's character, joins this, basically this task force to investigate fringe crimes, right? And that doesn't actually really come to fruition until like the very end of the episode. It's not even really brought up until like maybe 10 minutes left in the episode. So this pilot episode almost feels like kind of a self-contained story, and it just acts as this kind of I guess kind of this spark, right, to get then to the main premise of the show that'll continue on for the rest of its run. So the premise of this one is that this flight, right? So we start off on this flight. Something happens where this guy just completely turns almost like this translucent skin. I think he like throws up or maybe sneezes some of this chemical out into the air, and then all of the people on the flight breathe it and die. And so then, this mystery of how did this happen? Like, what happened on this flight that it showed up, it landed, but everyone on board was dead. And so that's kind of where we start. And then we get Olivia Dunham with the FBI coming in to investigate what they think is more likely kind of like a traditional terrorist attack or something like that. But of course, it's a lot more than that. And so that's kind of the main premise then. And then them trying to solve this, trying to find, the perpetrator of this. And then, of course, it gets a little even, like I said, convoluted, where we get a lot of kind of twists and turns like this. And then, like I said, towards the end, it's kind of hinting at, okay, Olivia Dunham's going to join this task force to investigate these kinds of crimes. And so then as the show goes on, we'll get more of these types of crimes that are, supernatural, that science fiction element to a lot of them there. So that's just my take on the premise. Like I said, I haven't seen any more episodes in this pilot, so maybe it kind of changes and weaves through there. But that's kind of the main thing where we start off in this pilot episode. Alright, so then in terms of the analysis for this pilot episode, I'll start off with the introduction of the characters, or in this case, I think mainly just our main character. This is, obviously there is like an ensemble cast, and I'll talk about a couple of the other characters, but I want to focus mainly on Olivia Dunham, right? Anna Torv's character here. And I will say this was pretty weak to me, especially compared to the other pilot episodes that I've taken a look at so far in the series here. There just isn't much about Olivia Dunham that makes her stand out. I do like kind of the stuff they start with the episode and the actual like physical introduction of her character with her in bed with Agent Scott, right? And so it's kind of this forbidden romance, if you will, of them, working together in the department and actually being together on the side, which is kind of frowned upon. And so we do get that introduction of her, but it's just a very kind of shallow character to me. And even the relationship and the stuff that she's willing to do in this pilot episode to save John Scott or Agent Scott, which is, her love interest, it just doesn't seem fully fleshed out because we don't know the history of them, how long they've been together. We just don't get enough time with them to really develop this relationship, and to the point where we understand why she would go to the lengths that she does in this episode to save him and to be with him again. And have this moment even in the kind of the dream sequence where it's kind of an emotional moment. And even towards the end of the episode, when he gets in the car crash and her kind of being emotional. So I just would have liked to see maybe a few more scenes at the very beginning of the episode to kind of establish that relationship and get us to care a little bit more about it. And so maybe that would have developed that character a little more. But yeah, just that, not much about her that kind of stands out. I wouldn't even really say that it's like a trope, a tropey character or anything like that. I don't think that's necessarily a stereotypical, FBI agent or anything like that. I just don't think there's much there. I think Anna Torv does a good job with what she's given, for sure. I think she's great, but yeah, I don't know. I was just wanting more, and I'm sure we'll get more, right? As the series goes on, that's kind of how it goes. They develop characters a lot more, give them some more backstory, and I'm sure we'll get even some more backstory with her and Agent Scott. But just in this pilot episode, I was just a little underwhelmed with that main character. But like I said, Anna Torv does bring enough to that performance where it's still, intriguing. You still want to learn more about that character, even though maybe the writing doesn't really give as much to that character. And then really the only other notable one would be Walter Bishop, right? Kind of our mad scientist played by John Noble in this one. Yeah, that's a pretty tropey character, right? It's kind of the mad scientist. They get him from this mental institution and have to kind of bring him back to work on these experiments. And I think John Noble, he's so great at it. Like, he really is. He really is great in that role. And I believe he got nominated for an Emmy, either for this season or maybe season 2, for playing this character. So, I think, again, it's a tropey character, but does he do a good job at it? Yes, right? So both things can be true. And I do really like his introduction, though, too. I feel like the sequence there where Olivia goes to the mental institution and kind of tries to talk to him. I really like specifically that shot where it's just, her looking at his back when he's sitting at the table there and he kind of turns around. I thought that was a really kind of great establishing shot and a great introduction to him there. For sure. And I guess you could talk about Peter Bishop, Joshua Jackson's character too, the way he's kind of wheeling and dealing there in Iraq when Olivia goes to meet him and that. There's a bit of kind of, that charm as well with him, but in the later parts of the pilot episode here, he just becomes kind of the voice of reason, and there's just not much else to that character, though I think towards the end of the episode they are maybe setting up where Olivia and Peter, his character, that might be kind of a love interest or some sort of dynamic there. And I might be totally wrong, I don't know, but this is what I got, that feeling at the end of the pilot episode there between those two. So, and then Lance Reddick, not much there in this pilot episode, at least. Just kind of, a good sequence there towards the end of the episode when stuff was kind of revealed that he knows maybe more than he's letting on. But yeah, not much there. But I think Lance Reddick does a good job with what he's given to. So great acting here, good performances. But I was just a little underwhelmed with the characters and specifically Anna Torv's Olivia Dunham, just in this pilot for sure. So. Introduction of the world or atmosphere. I think this was maybe the strongest point of this pilot and the show so far from what I've seen. The style is really, really apparent. Michael Giacchino, I believe that's how you say his last name. Of course, he's went on to score, Matt Reeves' Batman movie, all kinds of films now. But in 2008, for him to score this pilot episode, this is like one of the best scores I've heard in a pilot episode for a show. Like, it was so good and really helped to establish that style that the show was going for, along with the kind of fonts that they do where they kind of set it up like, it's not just kind of like a title card where you get like, okay, Boston, Massachusetts, right? Or in this case, like Logan Airport, Massachusetts. But they actually embed it within the scene. So like characters would walk through the kind of text that's on screen. So I thought that was really unique and something that I've like never seen before. And so just little things like that with the score, the title cards. Also, they have the thing where they do this like screen after every commercial break where they have this like object. I think a couple of them were like a leaf and a frog. And I'm sure that, comes back later on in the show, but that was kind of interesting too. So I think they did a really good job in kind of those little stylistic choices throughout this episode and kind of, building that kind of world or that atmosphere they want you to be in for this one. And then obviously they do a good job in establishing kind of the, obviously this big corporation that's led by this Bell, right? William Bell or something like that, Dynamic. I think that's the name of the company. And so they kind of establish this world of this advanced technology and science that the rest of the world isn't really privy to, including the FBI agents, which is kind of emphasized in a scene there where they talk about that with Olivia Dunham's character. And so, I just feel like they do a good job with introducing that kind of technology world. We get even a glimpse of a lot of the kind of advanced technology in that with the kind of big sequence where Olivia Dunham goes in this tank and is able to connect with the electromagnetic waves of John Scott's brain. And so, like I said, a little convoluted, but it goes into those places and kind of gives you a preview of maybe what the show is going to explore with those kind of concepts later on. So I think they did a really good job in terms of the world or atmosphere in this one with those things, like I said, and kind of introducing that, having that little bit of style, a little bit of kind of unique touch to the pilot episode that makes it stand out, especially for network TV. Like, I was pretty impressed that they took some risks with this, especially the score. I thought that was just really, really impressive stuff. So yeah, I can't say enough about that element too. And then the hook or the twist. So the hook is typically in the cold open, right? And that is definitely apparent in this episode. And that is a great cold open, I would say. Now, I will say it's not it's not the same as like something like a Breaking Bad to me, which I think I say this every time, but I think that's still the best hook to any pilot episode ever, because it has Walter White in that hook, right? It's a very much introduction of him along with kind of an introduction of the show and really gets you hooked into it. But in this case, it is more like kind of like a Twilight Zone or an X-Files, because the cold open or the kind of the hook in this case is a completely unrelated thing to our main character and kind of the main story that's going on. It's very much establishing kind of the case of the week, or, you know, the monster of the week, or whatever, you know, whatever it is, right? It's very much establishing, okay, here's the story that we're going to be covering this week, or that our main character has to solve, right? With that being said, though, I think it's still really effective hook. We're on this plane. We're just kind of thrust into this situation. And Jason Butler-Harner, I forgot to mention him. He's great in this pilot episode. And so we see him. He's on this plane. It looks like he's having some sort of like a panic attack with the turbulence. He gets up, and then all of a sudden he turns around, and it's just that, like, everything kind of seems normal until that point, and then it's like, holy, like, what happened to this guy? He looks terrible, right? His skin is, like, kind of melting, and like I said, he kind of then sneezes or kind of throws up on the flight attendant, and then all hell breaks loose. And so it is a really good hook in that way, and really gets you, like, especially that image of his face, that what he looks like, is really, really, like, it really gets you in and really intrigues you, like, how did that happen, right? Like, what is going on here? And so it really establishes what the show is going for with that science fiction kind of supernatural element for sure, just within that little hook there. So yes, it doesn't involve our main character, anything like that, where it kind of gets you hooked into that character and what you want to see more of them. You really just want to see more of the story, right? More of the kind of case of the week. What is this story? What is happening here? And how are we going to solve it, right, in this episode? So it is a really effective hook. It gets you in right away and makes you want to watch, you know, more, makes you want to watch past that first commercial break, which I thought was impressive. And then in terms of like a twist at the end of the episode, I mean, this pilot episode ends like very open-ended, especially compared to a couple other pilot episodes I've covered here in this series so far. I mean, there's a lot of twists towards the end of this episode, and the way it ends, it very much feels like there could be another few scenes, or at least like another half hour after the events at the very end of the episode, where we see them getting John Scott into the room, and they're going to question him because, yes, he's dead, but they still have this way of questioning him and getting information from him, and still mystery of who he's working for. So there's a lot of unanswered questions there at the end. And so I think that really leaves the door open too, which is something I like. So then the last point is the originality or uniqueness. Does this stand out compared to similar shows or kind of, you know, shows within this type of genre? And I think it definitely does, right? So I think at the core of it, you really could refer to this almost as like a procedural cop drama, right? Especially towards, you know, at the beginning of the episode, before things get really kind of off the rails. At least the way that they kind of are approaching it, it seems like they're approaching kind of a traditional terrorist attack on this plane, and it's the FBI investigating, right? And so in that way, I think, yeah, at the root of it, you could maybe call it a cop drama, but then, of course, the science fiction kind of supernatural element that they kind of, you know, inject into it makes it a completely kind of unique or original take on that cop drama. So to me, I think it definitely does stand out. Now, I'm not familiar with other shows. Obviously, like I said, I mentioned Debris. That came, you know, just in the last couple of years. So that was far after this show. And that seemed actually very similar in terms of the concept. Now that I've seen the pilot of this one and I watched that show, I'm like, yeah, maybe it was like almost a ripoff, I would go as far to say. But anyways, in terms of when this actually did come out, you know, in 2008, I think this was pretty damn unique, right? To have this kind of, yeah, it's a science fiction kind of supernatural show from J.J. Abrams, you know, with Lost, Alias, nothing necessarily groundbreaking maybe at the time, but it's the fact that it's kind of inserted into this cop drama where it's, you know, this kind of this department, right, that's investigating these fringe crimes. And so, yeah, it's very much embedded in FBI. Our main character's an FBI agent, but they're investigating not just typical crimes, right? It's kind of this supernatural science fiction world, if you will, that she's going to be diving into. And then we have a whole slew of concepts that we're going to work with. And, from what I read, at least, as the show goes on, we get parallel universes and all kinds of stuff. And so it definitely does, if you will, kind of combine those two, actually. It combines kind of the cop drama with also that kind of sci-fi, that kind of thing where you can dive into all kinds of different, advanced technology and all those things that they kind of are teasing in this pilot episode. So in that way, yeah, I think it's quite original, and I think it does, at least for the time when it came out, it definitely does make it quite unique, especially if you are just going to compare it to other cop dramas. Obviously, with that science fiction element, it does make it stand out for sure. So, yeah, definitely, I think that was another really strong suit of this pilot episode as well. So, all right, to end things off then, I do want to give a rating out of 10. So, for this episode, I think I'm going to give it a 7.25 out of 10, something like that. I think it's between a 7 and a 7.5. So I think I'll stick with 7.25 out of 10. I don't want to get too technical with these ratings, but I think that's what I'm going to give it right now. Because there were, some of the dialogue and stuff is just very, traditional, right? The stuff like, when I look at the pilots of Suits and White Collar, there is kind of less uniqueness in those shows, if you will, right? There's no science fiction element or kind of this high, fantasy, concepts like I've mentioned. But there is that comedy, and the dialogue just seems very witty. It's just very well written. This show, when I was watching the pilot episode, a lot of the writing is just kind of conventional, right? And, a lot of exposition in there to explain some of these concepts. And that's just kind of the nature of these types of shows, right? That's just what you're going to get. And so, and especially with the characters too, especially our main character in Olivia Dunham, I just was underwhelmed with that character. So, with that being said, like I said, I do really like some of the other elements in terms of the style, the score, the hook, all the kind of stuff that this show is kind of going for. I think it absolutely nails. So, kind of two sides to it here, and I think because of just the bit of the underwhelming with the characters and some of the writing here, I'm going to, take it down from maybe what I would have had it at, maybe like an 8, and I'll move it down to a 7.25 out of 10. We'll just go with that for now. Anyways, overall, I did enjoy this pilot episode, though, and I think I will definitely take a look at some more episodes, at least in the first season here. I've heard that it definitely does get kind of crazier as the seasons go on, and so I am, I'll look forward to that. If I do like season 1, then I'll definitely, explore more seasons of the show and try to, kind of get to the end of it. But yeah, we'll have to see. But overall, I did really enjoy my time watching this pilot episode. And yeah, 7.25 out of 10. It's not the highest so far. I think that may actually put this at the lowest rated pilot episode so far in the series. But like I said, it's not bad. I still got a lot of enjoyment out of it anyways. So yeah, really looking forward to taking a look at some other pilot episodes in the near future here. I know we have the Daryl Dixon show spinoff for Walking Dead, so I might take a look at the Walking Dead pilot next. But I do want to take a look at Sons of Anarchy as well. That's one I've been really looking forward to. So yeah, definitely stay tuned for those reviews in this series as we keep going and keep exploring more pilot episodes for sure. But like I said off the top, love to hear your guys' thoughts on this one, on Fringe, and the pilot episode. And if you have any advice for me in watching further in the show as well, that would be greatly appreciated. But anyways, like I said, stay tuned for more reviews, and that'll just about do it for this one.